Alright guys, welcome back to the video. So in the first one, we started by making my very first knife. So we got the whole shape of it ground out here. It's looking pretty good. We got those bevels ground in there, as well as I got it fully heat treated. So we did the quench in the oil. Then over the last few days here, I got the knife fully tempered up. So just using my kitchen oven, I put it in there at 425 degrees for 2 hours. I took it out, let it sit overnight. Then I did the same thing the next morning. And so now our knife is fully heat treated as far as I understand. Now this is one of those things about knife making that I still don't fully comprehend what the whole tempering and all that does. I know that after you quench the knife in the oil, it becomes very hard, but also very brittle. So the tempering helps bring back some of that ductility, I believe is the right word for it. Now we're good to move on to doing the rest of the finishing work here. And I'm super excited for this because we just get to do a ton of sanding now. So the first thing we have to start with is just getting our blade fully cleaned up. We want to get all of this crap that's on it off and get it nicely ground down. That way it's actually ready to be sharpened later on. Before jumping into the video, I want to let you know that I opened up a Patreon page recently. There's all kinds of cool perks there. You got early access to some of my condensed version videos, which I know are your guys' favorites. I've got all the plans and digital SketchUp files for the plans that I'm currently working on, plus a lot of my past plans, all available for free on there if you sign up for the top tier. As well as another perk at the top tier is that you get to be a part of a monthly design session that I'm going to be running every single month on the first Saturday of the month. It'll be you, me, and all those people that are in that top tier. We're all going to hang out, talk about some designs. I'll talk through some of my projects, and we can all kind of work together to help you if you're having some issues with some of the designs of your own project. So I would really appreciate it if you guys would be willing to go check that out. Blade is now sanded up. I sanded up to 320 grit. I've been reading that you're supposed to go up to you can go from anywhere from 600 up to 12,000. I don't want to burn through too much of the stuff that I have on this first knife because this one is not going to be a pretty gem. It's not going to be something that is like a beautiful piece of artwork. It's pretty rough in the way that it is right now. I don't want to go through and burn some of that more expensive sandpaper that I have because I want to save it for projects later on. So this 320 finish looks pretty good. But you can see here, this is what I was talking about when I said we went too deep with the chainsaw file earlier on in the process. So on both sides, we do have those darker lines that are obviously not in the right spot. But other than that, overall, I think the blade is actually looking really, really nice. So the next thing we're gonna do is work on the back area here. So before we can make our handles and put them on there, we gotta get this whole back area completely flattened. Now that any of the knife makers that might have stumbled upon this video are mightily confused, if you were expecting me to not use the fully equipped wood shop that was sitting behind me here for my knife scales, you're a little bit crazy. So all I did there was take a block of a really beautiful quarter sawn walnut that I had. It was the end cut of a board, so a piece that I would normally throw away. I don't know why I was holding on to it for so long, but I just knew that it was going to be a beautiful piece of wood to use for something like this. So the reason I couldn't use it for anything else is because it had a whole bunch of internal stress fractures and that in it, so you couldn't really do anything else with it, but it made some beautiful beautiful, absolutely beautiful knife scales. We have quite literally every color you can imagine in walnut in these scale pieces. We've got blacks, we've got purples, we've got deep browns, chocolate browns, light browns. This is some of the most beautiful walnut I have ever dealt with here. So in this next part, we're gonna be breaking the cardinal rule of knife making, and that is we're gonna be using just normal wood on our handle here. And so you might be wondering, why is this a cardinal sin of knife making? It's very simple. Wood moves, and as woodworkers, we know that. The problem that knife makers have is that when you glue the piece of wood to this immovable piece of steel, for some reason after a few months, the wood no longer is sitting nice and flush against the knife. And you'll see all kinds of these complaints all across knife making forums all over the internet. And as a woodworker, it's kind of funny to read through them and just kind of try and figure out people's confusion, because obviously the natural wood moves. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to use stabilized wood. Now, buying stabilized wood is absolutely ridiculous. 2 pieces of wood like that would cost about $30 to $40. Now, are the places that sell these overcharging? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But all I know is I have a whole pile, probably hundreds of dollars in small pieces of walnut that are literally perfect for doing this kind of stuff. And I do know how to stabilize the wood. I just can't do it right now because it's a little bit too expensive at the moment. So basically all you need to do is buy a bottle of this cactus juice. It's about 150 bucks. And then you need to buy a pressure chamber off of Amazon for like another 100 bucks. Combine those two, put your piece of wood in that cactus juice, you suck all the air out of that pressure chamber, the resin gets soaked in the wood, you wrap the wood up in tinfoil, throw it in an oven, and it bakes into the wood, and then you get perfectly stabilized wood. It can no longer expand and contract and do all that kind of stuff. So that was mildly unexpected. The epoxy that I bought, it's by Setcorp. They're a Canadian brand, which is really cool, but this is their C-Tough epoxy. I did not read enough about it, and I assumed it was just a 5-minute epoxy. It is not. It is actually a longer working time epoxy, which is really good in some cases, but not in the case of trying to make a knife. Because even after a full 2 hours of the epoxy being mixed out in the air, it was still somewhat moldable. Even now, just under 24 hours later, the epoxy is still soft in some of the really thick areas. So it's not a problem with the product. I can say that safely. It's more of a I didn't read the label properly. In case you guys were wondering why there was no video yesterday, that is why. I decided to just take the day off. Plus, Metro Exodus just went on a really good sale on Steam, and I bought that, and I was just hooked on that all day. So that's what I was doing yesterday. Well, I probably should have been out in the shop doing something. All we have left to do now is we just need to grind off these brass pins and then shape our handle, and then we're done. I did pretty good with the glue up. I didn't get a whole bunch of epoxy on the blade, but I definitely got some. I probably should have left it wrapped up in that masking tape. But overall, I don't think it's anything that we shouldn't be able to sand to, because unlike wood, metal is actually harder than the epoxy, so the epoxy should sand off first, I think, anyway. So we're just gonna get to work and get this thing done. Okay, so this is kind of a momentous occasion. This is the first time in my entire life that I have been able to get a knife sharp. Now that sounds really bad as someone that works with sharp tools all the time and sharpens stuff constantly. The reason my woodworking, why I always use jigs, is because I've never been able to get a knife sharpened before. I've had a Leatherman since I was 18 and I've never been able to get that knife sharp. I also carried a little Gerber folding knife for a while and I've never been able to get that blade nice and sharp. But this blade is razor sharp and I am so impressed by it. Just the way that it just slices through that. Like, I've never seen a knife actually do that in person. I've seen it all over YouTube, but I've never actually, like, in person been like, oh, look at my nice sharp knife. Slice with a perfectly crisp line on there. I have to kind of contain my excitement because I now have a very sharp blade in my hands that I have to be very careful with. And as you guys know, if you watch my channel, I talk with my hands quite a bit, as you can see with this other hand here. So I have to be very careful around the knife. But overall, I am just super, super thrilled with it. That walnut on the handle just came out beautifully. I ended up using two pieces that are book matched, so both of the sides, the grains follow each other just absolutely perfectly. We've got a slight dark transition from the top down to the bottom where it goes a little bit more on the lighter side of the walnut. And overall, just the tones, everything just is amazing. Everything is sanded up to 320 grit. I could probably go a little bit higher on the steel portions because there definitely is some, there's definitely still some lines in that in it. But yeah, this was an amazing first knife. The fact that it actually functioned and it's now sharp and I can actually use this thing, to me, that's impressive enough. There's definitely some stuff that I have to work on. You know, my transitions from the scales down to the blade, that needs some work. I did manage to go back in and fix it up a little bit. So just judging by the first video, not very many of my woodworking subscribers are very interested in the knife making. And I do apologize because there is going to be more knives coming out. There's going to be a lot more knife making projects because this is just so awesome. I also have some woodworking tools I am planning to make. Carving knives, marking knives. I want to make a travisher at some point in time. There's just a whole bunch of woodworking tools that I want to start making, you know, stuff that was traditionally just made by a woodworker in their shop. This is exactly why I've wanted to get into knife making, so I can start making some of my own tools. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. There will be some beauty footage of this thing in just a second here. But as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.